Hello everyone. I welcome you all to this lesson. Today I'm going to take up the topic how to attempt assertion and reason questions in boards. And children, this assertion and reason question basically I am taking up with the rise of nationalism in Europe. This is the chapter number 1 for class 10 CBSE syllabus. So children, here I begin. And before that, let me ask you, have you subscribed to my channel? If you have not subscribed up till now, then please do. And watch the video till end and press the like button if you have liked it. And I'm sure you're going to like it as it will be very helpful for you from the point of view of your exam. So children, let us start. Before this, I have already given you 75 MCQs. Hope you are going through that MCQs and it will be helpful to you too for this lesson. So let us start. Now in this lesson, in this video, I am going to deal with how to attempt assertion and reason questions in boards. So I'll be giving you the answer along with the explanation. So let us start. So before starting this assertion and reason question, let me tell you the rules, that is the direction of this particular lesson, that how you are going to start, how you are going to deal with this particular lesson. So now the directions are: mark the options which is most suitable. The option number A, if both assertion and reasons are true and reason is the correct explanation of assertion, then you will mark A. B, if both assertion and reasons are true but reason is not the correct explanation of assertions, then you will mark B. C, if assertion is true but reason is false. D, if both assertion and reason are false. So you have to see to the question and of both assertion and reason and see what they are talking about. So my first question is, the assertion is Italy was divided into 7 states, out of which only one was ruled by Italian princely house. Reason, the the north was under the domination of Bourbon kings of Spain. So in this particular question, your assertion is correct and the reason is incorrect. Since the north was under the Austrian, not Bourbon Spanish control. In the early 19th century, before unification of Italy was divided into multiple states often cited as 7 major ones. That is, Kingdom of Sardinia, ruled by an Italian princely house, the House of Savoy, then Lombardy, then Venetia, then Duchy of Parma, Duchy of Modena, Grand Duchy of Tuscany, and the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Only the kingdoms of Sardinia was ruled by an Italian dynasty, that is the House of Savoy. The others were controlled by foreign rulers or had rulers imposed by Austria or Spain. However, the north of Italy, especially Lombardy and Venetia, was under Austrian Habsburg control and not under Bourbon or Spain. So, children, assertion is true and reason is false. Question number 2. And the question is assertion. Germany, Italy, and Switzerland were divided into kingdoms, duchies, and cantons, whose rulers had their autonomous territories. Reason, they were forcibly bound to each other in spite of their autonomous rule. So, in this particular case, Assertion, your answer is assertion is true, but reason is false. Now, the explanation. Assertion is true because historically, during the 18th and the 19th century, these regions were fragmented into smaller political units. Germany was a part of Holy Roman Empire comprising many semi-independent states. Italy was divided into kingdoms and duchies like the Kingdom of Naples, the Papal States, etc. Switzerland had self governing cantons. So, children, while there were cultural, linguistic, and sometimes economic ties among these states, like through the German confederations or Zollverein, politically they were not closely bound. In fact, their autonomy often made unification difficult, so the reason does not fully justify the assertion. That is why assertion is true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Hope you are understanding, children. Now I come to question number 3, assertion. And the assertion is Giuseppe Mazzini worked for the conservatives for the monarchy. Reason, Italy had to continue to be a patchwork of small states and kingdoms. So, your answer is both assertion and reason are false. Why it is false? So, let's go through the explanation. Giuseppe Mazzini was a revolutionary nationalist and Republican, not a conservative. He opposed monarchy and believed in a unified Republican Italy. He founded Young Italy, a movement aimed at unifying Italy through a democratic republic. So, the reason this was not the case, this was not Mazzini's belief, it was the existing situation before unification that he sought to change. He wanted to end this fragmented structure. So, the assertion is false and reason is also false. So, children, I hope you are understanding. Now, question number 4. The assertion is culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Reason, weavers in Silesia had held a revolt against contractors who supplied raw materials and gave them orders for finished textiles but drastically reduced their payment. So the answer is of this particular question, assertion is true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. So the explanation now I'll give you why it is like this. Assertion, culture through language, folk songs, poetry, folklore, and had shared history helped enforcing a national identity. Romantic thinkers and artists often used cultural symbols to unite people emotionally and create a sense of create a sense of belonging to an nation. So, and the reason is true, but unrelated. This is a historical fact of 1845 where Sicilian weavers revolted due to economic exploitation. However, this reason does not explain the role of culture in nation building. It is about economic hardship and not cultural nationalism. So, assertion is true and reason is also true, but not the correct explanation of assertion. Now I come towards question number 5, assertion. From the very beginning, the French Revolution introduced various measures and practices like the idea of la patrie and la citoyenne. Reason. This was done to create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. Now the answer is both assertion and reason are true, and the reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now I'll give you the explanation why it is true. The French Revolution promoted nationalism. Ideas like La Patrie, the fatherland, and Les Citoyens, the citizens, were introduced to replace the monarchy with a uniform national identity. These measures helped instill the concept that sovereignty lay with the people and fostered a collective French identity. The French Revolution, from the French, so now the assertion from the very beginning, French Revolution introduced various measures practices like the idea of la patrie and le citoyen. Reason this was done to create a sense of collective identity amongst the French people. Understood, children? So both A and R, that is assertion and reason, are true, and reason is the correct explanation of the assertion. Now I move towards question number 6, assertion. And the assertion is the Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak their Gaelic language or wear their national dress, and large numbers were forcibly driven out of their homeland. Reason is the English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a largely Catholic country. Your answer is assertion is true, but reason is not correct. Is not the correct explanation of assertion. Now I'll tell you the explanation why it is so. The assertion correctly describes the suppression of Scottish culture after their defeat in uprisings against English rule, especially after the Jacobean rebellions. However, the reason refers to events in Ireland where English Protestants were supported to dominate the Irish Catholics. This is a separate issue and not the direct cause of what happened to the Scottish Highlanders. Understood, children? So that is why the reason is false. So A is true and R is not the correct explanation of A, that is assertion. Now I move towards question number 7, and the assertion is on 18th May 1848, 831 elected representatives revolted in the Frankfurt Parliament. And the reason is the elected representative revolted against the issue of extending political rights to women. And your answer is assertion is true, but the reason is false. So, how it is like this? Let us analyze it. So, the explanation is on 18th May 1848, 831 elected representatives are indeed gathered in the Frankfurt Parliament in a time to draft a constitution for a unified Germany. However, they did not revolt. They assembled to form a national assembly. Also, The main focus was on unification and establishing a constitutional monarchy and not granting political rights to women. In fact, women were largely excluded from political participation. So now I move towards question number 8, and the assertion is the activities and campaigns of Jacobin clubs prepare the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy in 1790s. And the reason is with the outbreak of revolutionary wars, French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism abroad. So your answer is both assertion and reason are true, but the reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Now, why it is like this? Let us analyze. So, the explanation is when the news of the revolutionary events in France reached the different cities of Europe, students and other members of the educated middle classes began setting up Jacobin clubs. Their activities and campaign prepared the way for the French armies which moved into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and much of Italy in 1790s. With the outbreak of revolutionary wars, the French armies began to carry out the idea of nationalism abroad. So you hope you are understanding, children. So now I move towards question number 9, and the assertion is secret societies sprang up in many European states to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. And the reason is conservative regimes set up in 1815 were autocratic, and the fear of repression drove many liberal nationalists underground. And your answer is both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now let's analyze it. So the explanation is conservative regimes set up in 1815 were autocratic. They did not tolerate critics criticism and dissent and sought to curb activities that questions the legitimacy of autocratic governments. During the year following 1815, the fear of repression drove many liberals, nationalists underground. So, secret societies sprang up in many European states to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. To be revolutionary at this time meant a commitment to oppose monarchical forms that had been established after the Vienna Congress and to fight for liberty and freedom. Now, question number 10, and the assertion is Metternich described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social orders. And the reason is Mazzini's relentless opposition to monarchy and his vision of democratic republics frightened the conservatives. So the answer is both assertion and reasons are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now let's see what the explanation is all about. Mazzini believed that God had intended nations to be the natural unit of mankind. So Italy could not continue to be a patchwork of small states and kingdoms. It had to be forged into a single unified unified republic within a wider alliance of nations. This unification alone could be the basis of Italian liberty. Following his model secret societies was set up in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland. Mazzini's relentless opposition to monarchy and his vision of democratic republics frightened the conservatives. Metternich described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Now I move towards question number 11, and the assertion is in the first half of the 19th century, in most countries, there were more seekers of job than employment. And the reason is population from rural areas migrated to the cities to live in overcrowded slums. So the answer is both assertion and reason are true. And reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now let us analyze it. So the explanation is in 1830s were years of great economic hardship in Europe. The first half of the 19th century saw an enormous increase in population all over Europe. In most countries, there were more seekers of jobs than population from rural areas migrated to the cities to live in overcrowded slums. Now, question number 12. And the question is Otto von Bismarck was a Prussian minister. Reason other Prussian measures and practices became a model for other parts of Germany. And the answer is both assertion and reason is true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. So now let's see what the explanation is all about. Prussia took on the leadership of the movement for national unification of Germany. Its chief minister, Otto von Bismarck, was the architect of this process carried out with the help of Prussian army and bureaucracy. Three wars over 7 years with Austria, Denmark, and France ended in Prussian victory and completed the process of unification. The nation building process in Germany had demonstrated the dominance of Prussian state power. The new state placed a strong emphasis on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial system in Germany. Prussian measures and practices often became a model for rest of Germany. So now I move towards question number 13, and the assertion is the Chancellor of Prussia and the main architect for the unification of Germany, who believed in the policy of blood and iron, was Otto von Bismarck. Reason the rulers of Prussia during the unification of Germany was Kaiser Wilhelm I. So your answer is both assertion and reason are true, and the reason is also the correct explanation of assertion. So now let us analyze it what the explanation tells us. Assertion is true. Otto von Bismarck was indeed the Chancellor of Prussia and the chief architect behind the unification of Germany. He famously advocated the policy of blood and iron to achieve German unification through war and industrial power. So, And the explanation of reason is also true. William I was the king of Prussia and later became the first German emperor of the unified Germany in 1871. Bismarck served under Kaiser William I, and his ability to implement his policies was due to the support and authority of the king. So, children, now I move towards question number 14. Hope all these assertions and reason questions are clear to you in your mind. I hope you are understanding because these are very important questions and I hope you are going to understand them well. So, now I move towards question number 14. Treaty of Vienna was signed in 1815. Reason: the main objective was to undo the changes that had come about in Europe during the Napoleonic Wars. So now your answer is both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now let us analyze it. Assertion In assertion, what we find is that the Treaty of Vienna was also known as the Congress of Vienna, was held in 1815 after the defeat of Napoleon. And the reason that the Congress aimed to restore the old monarchical order, redraw boundaries, and prevent the spread of revolutionary ideas that had emerged during the Napoleon's rule. The Treaty of Vienna was signed precisely to achieve this objective, reversing Napoleonic reforms and restoring conservative, conservative regimes. So, children, hope you are understanding it and there is no confusion in these assertion and reasoning questions. So now I move towards question number 15. And the assertion is: initially Napoleon was welcomed by people, but later people lost faith in him. And the reason is it was because of increased taxation, censorship, forced conspiration, and into the French armies created hostile situations. So your answer is both assertion and reason are correct. And reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So children, now let me give you the explanation. Assertion is true. When Napoleon came to power, many Europeans initially welcomed them because he promised stability, law, and order. However, over time, his authoritarian rule and military ambitions led to his disillusionment. Reason is also true. These were all. These were some of the main reasons where people began to resent Napoleon's rule, especially in the territories he conquered. His reforms often came with heavy cost. Yes, the harsh measures mentioned in the reason were key factors behind the loss of public support for Napoleon. So, children, both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So, now I move towards question number 16, and the question is: Civil Code of 1804 is also known as Napoleonic Code. Reason: Napoleonic Code did away with all the privileges based on birth, established equality before the law, and secured the rights to property. And your answer is assertion is false, but reason is true. So, why so? Let's see. Assertion is incorrect as Napoleonic Code is actually the Civil Code of 1804. Understood, children? So, it is 1804 and so not 1805. So the assertion is incorrect. Reason is true. as these were the major reforms introduced by Napoleonic Code. So, assertion is false if it is 1805, but if it is 1804, then assertion is correct. And the reason is true. So, now I move towards question number 17. And the assertion is a custom union or Zollverein was formed at the initiative of Prussia. And the reason is tariff barriers were abolished and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. So the answer is both assertion and reasons are true. And the reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now I'm giving you the explanation. Assertion is true as Prussia took the lead in forming the custom union or Zollverein in 1834 to promote economic unity among the German states. The reason is also true. So one of the key achievements of Zollverein was the abolition of tariff barriers among member states, which encouraged free trade. It also standardized and reduced the number of currencies through the exact reduction to 2 is a bit simplified. It significantly reduced the complexity of currency system. So, yes, Prussia's initiatives directly led to the economic reforms mentioned, which made the Zulvarians' success and paved the way for political unification. So, children, both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So, now I move towards question number 18, and the assertion is Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832. Reason under this treaty, Greece was recognized as an independent nation. So the answer is both assertion and reasons are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. Now let us analyze this. The Treaty of Constantinople was signed in 1832 between the Ottoman Empire and the Great Powers of Britain, France, and Russia. So these three countries were known as the Great Powers. It recognized Greece as an independent sovereign state, ending the Greek War of Independence that began in 1821. So, children, both assertion and reasons are true, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now I move towards question number 19. And the assertion is, Act of Union was signed between England and Scotland. And what is the reason? The object of the act was to undo changes that had come up in Europe during the Napoleonic Wars. So your answer is assertion is true, but your reason is false. So now the explanation. Assertion, the act of unifying. This assertion, the act of unifying, the Act of Union in 1707 united the kingdoms of England and Scotland into a single kingdom called Great Britain. So, what was the reason? The reason the Napoleonic War. The Napoleonic War occurred much later in 1803 to 1815. The Act of Union had nothing to do with those events. It was primarily motivated by political, economic, and security concern in the early 18th century. So, children, assertion is true and reason is false. So, now I move towards question number 20. And the question is Ideas of national unity in the early 19th century Europe was closely aligned to the ideologies of liberalism. Liberalism. And the reason is so, in 1834, a custom union or Zollverein was formed on the initiative of Prussia. So your answer is both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. So now let us analyze this why it is so. So the explanation is assertion in the early 1800s liberalism promoted individual freedoms, constitutional government and national unification. National unity was often seen as a path to ensure liberty and self rule, especially in fragmented regions like Italy and Germany. And the reason the Zollverein in 1834 was formed under Prussia's leadership to create economic unity by moving internal tariffs among German states. However, it was an economic measure, not a direct result of liberal national ideology, although later supported unification. So, children, both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. So, now let's move towards question number 21. And the assertion is the 18th and 19th century found a way out by personifying a nation. And the reason is they represented a country as if they were a person. So, your answer is both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. So, now let us analyze why it is so. And the explanation is in the age of nationalism, artists found personified nations as human figure. For example, Germania for Germany, Marina for France to create a strong emotional symbols of unity and identity reasons. And your reason is this is exactly what personification means, depicting the nation in human form, often female, to symbolize abstract ideas like unity, liberty, and homeland. So, the explanation is that the assertion in the age of nationalism artists often personified nations as human figure. For example, Germania for Germany, Mariani for France, to create a strong emotional symbol of unity and identity. And the reason is this is exactly what personification means, depicting the nation in human form, often female, to symbolize abstract ideas like unity, liberty, and homeland. So, children, now I move towards question number 22. And the assertion is like Germany, Italy too had a long history of political fragmentation. Reason during the middle of 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. So children, your answer is both assertion and reason are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So now let us analyze it. Assertion in Italy, like Germany, was divided into multiple independent kingdoms, duchies, and city states for centuries before unification. And the explanation of reason is around the mid 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 major states, including the Kingdom of Sardinia, the Papal State, the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, and others. So, both assertion and reason are true, and reason is of not the correct explanation of assertion. So, children, these were your 22 question and answers, that is the assertions and reasons based question from the point of view of your exam. Hope this lesson will be beneficial for you from the point of view of your exam, and you are going to come out with flying colors. So do these question answers carefully and focus on each and every word so that you are able to solve each and every questions nicely. So, with these words, I end my lesson. Do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Thank you.